Ambassador Sikri, what do you make of the President of Maldives asking China to send more tourists to Maldives? Is this panic or is he cocking a snook at India?
No, I think the President of Maldives has been clearly rattled by the response to what his own minister, the deputy ministers in his government, the completely uncalled for, insulting and derogatory remarks made by these three deputy ministers has evinced a reaction, a spontaneous reaction across India and in Maldives. I think this has completely rattled the President of Maldives. I think, first of all, these remarks were completely uncalled for. Our Prime Minister was in Lakshadweep. He is developing the islands of Lakshadweep, building an airport there. This is perfectly within our territory and will be a great boost to tourism for India and for this region. But from there, for these deputy ministers to make these uncalled for remarks has evinced a reaction across India. Ordinary people have cancelled their visits. Ease my trip, make my trip, saying they were not taking bookings. Chambers of commerce are calling for a drop in promotion on Maldives. And I must tell you that within Maldives, the reaction has been equally strong. Former Vice President of Maldives, former Defense Minister, Foreign Minister of Maldives, they are calling out the president and they're saying, what are you doing? Suspension is not enough. You must dismiss these ministers. And ordinary people, I know even, the ministers, there's some people in my group, South Asia Women's Network, they're sending out messages. They're really embarrassed and sorry for these kind of remarks having been made by our ministers.
And yet he continues to do so, ma'am. Is he very clearly playing that China card to the hilt? Admiral Sinha, President Muizu fought and won elections on an India out plank. Does India out translate into China in? Commercial projects initially, that hydrography joint operations, the ones with India have already been cancelled. Does China move in this territory then, sir?
Well, thank you, Gaurav, for getting me on your program. Let me address the first question first. This India out, the background is like this, that Mr. Yamin, who was supposed to have fought the election, but he was jailed and therefore he disqualified and he could not stand for election. Thereafter, his coalition partner, which is the party of Muizu, he doesn't belong to his party, he's a coalition partner, they chose him. And then he realized that on his own, he is not going to win an election. And therefore, very in the last minute, only in last about 20-25 days, that, this India out has been, he knew that India out will actually gel well with large section of people. Because it's very natural. Any small country in the vicinity of a big country, anybody who's anti-India, he, draws more attention, he gets more support.
Well, they get our vaccines from us, they get their water from us, Indian Navy ships providing the water. And now when they're, yet they want India out. I mean, someone needs to read out the right act to such elements.
See,
it's disappointing that such elements are chosen or elected as presidents.
Gaurav, he does not have his own political base. He is just fought on this election campaign. Basically, Yamin's vote has gone to him. A time will come when, if it does not comply with everything that Yamin says, which the time will come, then you will find the friction between two parties actually, coming to surface. But having said that, there is no doubt that there is a sentiment among some sections of society where India, having, sent the helicopters, some of our troops were maintaining the helicopters and the Dornier aircraft. They think that, they are the troops. They're not fighting troops. They're all maintainers of these aircraft. And if it comes, they have, evacuated 500 people in last 5 years.
Exactly.
Saved their lives. So they will get to know, they will realize this only when the Indians are not there. And very unlikely that from that distance, China will come and start doing all this.
No, we've seen when Maldives ran out of water, China did not come and give them water. Indian Navy ships did. When they needed vaccines, China did not give them vaccines. India did. But General Sharma, do you see this China problem expanding from Himalayas now along Indian Ocean region, not just Sri Lanka in the Bay of Bengal, now all along the Indian Ocean, Arabian Sea? China is expanding its navy at a very fast pace, sir.
Thank you, Gaurav, for inviting me. At the outside, I must say that the remarks of the deputy ministers were in bad taste, very bad taste, and I think the reaction that outflowed from India is absolutely normal. Having said that, isn't all the neighbors that we have in India playing the China card? When we are, talking about Maldives, there is every weapon system that Bangladesh is now using, from tanks to aircraft, belong to China. The BNS Sheikh Hasina, the newest of the submarine bases has been made by the Chinese. The Nepalese have got roads and tunnels being made through Himalayas, coming from Shigatse down to Kathmandu, being made by the Chinese. In Malé itself, the airport onto Malé, the first bridge which was connecting between the airport and Malé, was made by the Chinese. It's called Sina Malé. And the amount of Chinese investment in Maldives and the BRI in the course of last 5 to 6 years is tremendous. So it's not one day's work here. It's the work being done, desalination plants, the link being established to other things, other places there, the agriculture being done in Maldives. So the work being done by the Chinese in each one of our neighboring countries is so tremendous that, now you can't say they're playing Chinese card. It's the way Chinese are getting it. Our reaction, I think, initial reaction, the anger, the anguish is absolutely normal. But the strength of the diplomacy is to work with inimical governments and find measures to it. Maldives is our neighbor. We can't lose the neighbor. We can't have anger between all our neighbors and say we want to rise up to become a power in the global south. We have to take our neighbors with us. So the initial anguish apart, and we must state our point firmly and strongly, but we also must move forward to make sure that the goodwill that exists in Maldives, that we are able to take advantage of that goodwill.
Okay, that goodwill seems to be dwindling when a hostile government is elected. Ambassador Sikri, President Muizu will remain hostile to India and is openly subservient to China. Is he walking into a trap, eyes wide shut, like Sri Lanka and other countries? Or, as General Sharma points out, somewhere the Chinese are making deeper inroads and replacing us in development projects all across?
Look, I am very much in favor of good relations with neighbors, and certainly as part of India's neighborhood first policy, Maldives is very important. But there are red lines. And we cannot forget those red lines. Those statements by those ministers were red lines. The situation in Maldives today is turbulent. People today sent messages that there may be some demonstrations in Maldives against their own president. So I think that it is not that we are being inimical to them. I think the situation in Maldives is in churn. There is radicalization that you mentioned. There is a lot of drugs that is spread across the island, which is a difficult problem. They have huge internal issues, but India is willing to help them. They realize that the help for India, there are so many people from Maldives living in Kochi and Bengaluru and other in these two states, and they are living happily. But if the situation continues with the anti-Indianism, then India has to consider what action to take. Despite the fact that we are willing to help the people of Maldives in anything, any way they want, provided you yourself, are willing to respond in equal time.
Is this a setback for Indian diplomacy, that all across our neighborhood there are major setbacks, and are our neighbors cutting their nose to spite their face? Pakistan may do that, and we can understand that. Pakistan is a nutcase, but what about countries which are very friendly like Bangladesh or Sri Lanka falling into that debt trap with China?
Now, let me tell you very clearly that China is overactive in South Asia. They should remember that they are not a South Asian country. They are north of the Himalayas, and they should, not try and interfere in South Asian countries. But they are doing that, whether it is China, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and now, of course, Maldives, and we saw earlier in Nepal as well. They tried. But I must say that it is India's own very successful neighborhood first policy that brings it all back on track. Look at Nepal today. Our external affairs minister was there very recently. We saw that they have realized that when they are friendly with China, all that China was doing with them was salami slicing at their border in the north, the China-Nepal border in the north, and putting their own border posts and so on. So every country has realized that if you try and be friendly with China at the expense of India, it's not going to serve your interests.